Real quick before we jump into today's episode. What if 2026 was the year your story finally came together with the support of writers who are right there with you? The Emerging Writers Academy is my new monthly membership for fiction and memoir writers. You get masterclasses, live coaching, and a community committed to writing, revising, and finishing their stories. Spots close January 15th. Learn more at nancypanuccio.com/writer. That's Nancy with an I, Panuccio with two C's, nancypanuccio.com/writer. If you're front-loading backstory or world building or explanations in your opening, you're killing your pacing. Not because that information isn't important, but because the reader doesn't want it yet. They don't need it yet. They don't need to know it all yet. Save it for later. Give the reader just enough to follow the story right now and trust that they'll care about the deeper context once they're hooked. Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has the story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and book coach. Each week, we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now, let's begin. Your reader puts your book down at page 50. They don't hate it. In fact, your writing is fabulous. You've got a great narrative voice. You have a compelling situation. You have fascinating characters, but your reader's just not hooked. And here's the frustrating part. You revised that opening 5 times. You cut hundreds of words. You tightened every sentence. You got straight to the action. So why are they still losing interest? Because you were trying to fix the wrong problem. I've read hundreds of manuscripts over the years written by skilled writers with strong voices, vivid imagery, and all in all, great writing. But the one thing that kills the story is pacing, especially in the opening. Most writers think pacing is about speed, how fast or slow things move on the page. But that's not really what pacing is. And once you understand what pacing really is, you stop trying to make it faster and start making choices that actually keep readers hooked. That's what we're talking about in today's episode, specifically the 3 biggest pacing mistakes writers make in their openings. So before we get to the common mistakes, let's talk about what pacing actually is, because most writers think pacing is about speed. Short sentences equal fast pacing. Long descriptions equal slow pacing. And sure, sentence rhythm matters. It does affect pacing, but that's not what's driving your pacing. Pacing is about momentum. It's about whether the reader cares about what happens next. Pacing is how you modulate the reader's experience. You can write the tightest, fastest action scene, and if the reader doesn't care, it'll still feel slow. It'll still feel sluggish. You can be a great writer and still have sluggish pacing, meaning the reader starts to drift, lose sight of what the story is about because there's too much noise getting in the way. Or you can write long, descriptive prose, lots of internalization, quiet moments, and if the reader is desperate to know what happens, they can't put it down. That's pacing. So good pacing isn't about speed. It's about creating a question in the reader's mind and making them need the answer. It's your reader moving down the page without slowing down because they're riveted by wanting to know more. That's how you control their experience. That's how you control pacing. So when your opening drags, it's usually not because you're using too many words, although that could be part of it. It's because you're not using the right words. It's because you're not allowing your opening to orbit around a central story question. And if you're not orbiting around a central story question or story problem, you're not creating that need for the reader to lean in to know more. So let's look at the 3 ways writers kill pacing in their openings. Mistake number 1, starting before the story starts. This is very common, starting your story before anything's at stake. Writers do this because they think they need to establish normal life before disrupting it. They need to show the character's routine, their world, their relationships, so the reader understands who they are before things go wrong. So they're trying to create the context before the character's life gets upended. But here's the problem. If nothing's at stake yet, the reader has no reason to care or to lean in. So let me give you an example. You open with your protagonist waking up, getting coffee, going to work. So you're setting the scene. You're showing their ordinary world. And the reader's question is, okay, so what? Where is this going? Because right now, there's no tension. There's no question the reader needs answered. They're just watching someone go through their day. Now, maybe on page 10, something happens. The protagonist gets life-changing news, or they're forced to make a decision they're uncomfortable with, or a new character shows up with an offer that changes everything. That's when the story actually starts. But you've already lost readers by then because they've spent 10 pages waiting for a reason to care. So here's what to do instead. You want to start where the tension starts. That doesn't mean you need explosions on page 1 or a bar fight or something dramatic. It just means the reader has a question they need answered. So maybe your character can't sleep, like Maya in The House in the Pines, or he's 3 days out from getting released from prison, but he has a bad feeling something's going to screw it up. Maybe she's dreading a meeting, or he's getting fired. Maybe your protagonist is on a walk and sees a dead pigeon who he assumes died of a heart attack, and we learn he's survived his own heart attack. So something in their life is off balance or incomplete, but it creates this open story loop the reader is eager to close. Now the reader is leaning in. They care. They want to know more. That's pacing. The mistake isn't writing slow or quiet openings. The mistake is writing openings where nothing's pulling the reader forward yet. Okay, mistake number 2, answering questions too fast. You create a question, but you answer it too quickly or resolve it too quickly. And then you deflate all the tension. This happens when writers think they need to hook the reader with a mystery or a dramatic moment, but then they immediately explain it and deflate all the tension of wanting to know more. Let me give you an example from a book that does this right. The House in the Pines by Ana Reyes opens with a video that's circulated on social media. Now, the protagonist, Maya, hasn't seen it yet because she's suffering from insomnia and avoiding screens. So we know more than she does, but right away we're wondering, well, what's in the video? Is she in it? What's happening that's making it circulate on social media? Why does it matter? And why is everyone talking about it? That's all we get on page 1. We see then Maya struggling with insomnia and anxiety drug withdrawal. We still don't know what's causing her anxiety, but we trust that all will be revealed in due time. Now, Reyes doesn't answer those questions on page 2. On page 14, Maya finally sees the video on her social media feed. We get a description of what's on the video, what appears to be a woman dropping dead next to a man, and then we get the name of the man she recognizes. We don't learn what the video contains until the end of chapter 1, and even then, the video itself becomes the central mystery that drives Maya's pursuit throughout the entire novel. We also don't get all the backstory about the man in the video. We just know there's a history between them. We read to fill in those open story loops. That's control. That's pacing. Now, imagine if Rias had written it differently. Imagine if on page 2, Maya watched the video and we saw exactly what was in it and she immediately understood what it meant. The reader would think, okay, so now what? So the tension would be gone. You have given them the answer before they had time to really care about the question. So your opening is like a striptease. You want to withhold and delay, reveal a little at a time over the course of the story. Because here's the thing. The reader doesn't want the answer right away. They want to wonder. They want to be curious. They're starting to make expectations and they read to see if their expectations are correct or whether it's going to be thwarted in some unexpected way. So withhold and delay and reveal a little at a time. Definitely in your first chapter, you want to withhold more. Okay, on to mistake number 3. Filling space with stuff the reader doesn't care about. So sometimes writers will fill the gap between the question and the answer with the things that the reader doesn't care about yet. This is where a lot of backstory problems come from. So let's say we start with a married couple where there's some hint of trouble in the marriage, some hint of tension, nothing explosive, just the simmering beginnings of trouble. The reader wants to know where this tension will lead. And sure enough, at the end of chapter 1, the tensions heighten. And now we're expecting a bigger confrontation. They don't have the big fight until chapter 2. Things escalate, but the reader is already expecting tensions to escalate. The signs are all there. But before you get there, you spend 3 pages explaining how they met, the history between these two characters, the crushed dreams, etc. And the reader's response is, yeah, I get it. Can we get to the confrontation now? So you're trying to build context, but the reader already has a question they want answered. So if you start where things are already unstable, and that's always a good choice to introduce your character, by the way, where things are already unstable, and every sentence that doesn't move them closer to that answer feels like a delay, well, that slows the pacing and stops it cold. So here's the fix. You only want to include information the reader needs to understand what's happening right now. You don't need to explain the entire history of the betrayal before the confrontation. You just need enough for the reader to follow the scene in the present moment. That may mean a sentence or 2 of backstory. The rest, you can weave it in later when the reader actually wants it. Because here's the thing about backstory. Readers don't care about it until they care about the character. And they don't care about the character until something's at stake. So if you're front-loading backstory or world building or explanations in your opening, you're killing your pacing. Not because that information isn't important, but because the reader doesn't want it yet. They don't need it yet. They don't need to know it all yet. Save it for later. Give the reader just enough to follow the story right now and trust that they'll care about the deeper context once they're hooked. So those are the 3 biggest pacing mistakes I see in story openings. Number 1, starting too early before anything's at stake. Number 2, answering questions too fast. Number 3, filling space with information and backstory the reader doesn't care about yet and doesn't need to know. So if you fix those 3 things, your opening will feel tighter and more compelling. Now, if you're in the Emerging Writers Academy, we're going deeper on pacing in our masterclass. We're looking at how to pull readers through your entire manuscript, how to control pacing at the story level. Remember, pacing isn't about speed. It's about creating questions the reader needs answered and not killing the tension the moment you create it. So fix those 3 mistakes in your opening and you'll have your readers hooked. So there you have it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you know any writers who need some support in their writing, please share this episode or the Writer Unleashed podcast in general. And if you love what you're listening to, subscribe on your favorite listening platform. And if you're listening on Apple, please leave me a review. Reading how this podcast impacts your writing truly lights me up and helps me create topics for the show. Till next time, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.